It was early on a cold morning. On the edge of a forgotten town near the Canadian border stood an old house. Its roof nearly caved in, windows covered with plastic, and walls stained with damp and mold. That morning, a black SUV pulled up in front of the run-down house. The door opened. Ryan Reynolds stepped out. He wore a simple coat and carried nothing but a cup of coffee. He looked around. The house reminded him of the war novels he read as a kid. But this wasn't fiction. This was real. Ryan softly, "Someone is still trying to live here?" He walked to the front door. It was barely hanging on its hinges. He pushed it gently and it creaked open. The smell of mildew rushed out, thick in his throat. The walls were cracked. Part of the ceiling had collapsed. But someone was inside. An old man sat on the couch, wearing a faded military jacket. His hands cracked and trembling. Ryan stepped closer. "Ryan, hello, Mr. Darnell?" The man slowly turned his head. His eyes were weak, but his voice was steady. "Veteran, I've seen you on TV, but why are you here?" Ryan didn't look away. For a moment, he swallowed hard. This man was a war veteran, 3 tours in Afghanistan, and then forgotten by the very system he served. Ryan quietly, "A letter reached me. One you didn't write yourself, but someone wrote it for you." The old man bowed his head slightly. His eyes glistened. "Veteran, my boy, he doesn't speak anymore, but sometimes he writes things down." Ryan took a folded piece of paper from his coat pocket. The handwriting was clearly a child's. "My dad is a hero, but everyone forgot him. Someone please help." Ryan had stared at those lines for a long time. And then he made his decision. He would come to this house. He would see this man. And above all, he would come with no cameras, no show, just as a human being. "Veteran softly, no one said they could help me. Not in years. Only you. Why?" Ryan didn't answer. He simply knelt down, placed his hands over the veteran's trembling ones, and whispered, "Ryan, because someone still remembers you, and that someone is your son." Outside, the wind howled through broken trees. But inside, something broke for the first time in years. Silence. And that silence would speak louder than words. The next morning, as the sun filtered through the cracked walls, Ryan was already awake. Veteran Darnell was still sleeping, wrapped in a blanket with his son beside him. They looked like a family in quiet stillness. Ryan was crouched in the corner of the kitchen, jotting down notes on his phone. Suddenly, the front door opened. It was a small woman, the neighbor. She held some tea and a piece of bread. She hesitated when she saw Ryan. "Woman," surprised but polite. "Excuse me, aren't you Ryan Reynolds?" Ryan, smiling softly. "Yes, but today, I'm just a guest." The woman nodded, her eyes welling up. "Woman, no one's visited them in years. The government cut off their aid. The poor man's been alone in this house for years." Ryan didn't look away. Hearing those words was hard. But that was exactly why he was here, to face the truth. At that moment, a weak voice came from inside. Veteran Darnell had woken up. "Veteran, is someone home?" Ryan walked to the doorway, smiling. "Ryan, your neighbor. She brought you breakfast." The veteran lifted his head from the pillow. His lips trembled. "Veteran, the last time I remember having breakfast was with my boy when he was little." Ryan, gently. "Then today, let's bring back that day." A small table was set. Darnell, his son, the neighbor woman, and Ryan. 4 people. But it felt less like a table and more like a family being whole again after years apart. Darnell took a sip of tea. His eyes misted over. He bowed his head slightly. "Veteran, you know, I didn't just live in this house. This house kept me alive. But now, I can't keep it standing." Ryan paused for a moment. Then he reached out, placing a folder on the table. "Ryan, I came to listen, but I won't just listen and leave." Inside the folder were plans, home repairs, heating system, a new roof. He had organized everything, quietly, without fanfare. Veteran Darnell looked at the folder, trembling hands touching the pages. Then he turned to Ryan. Veteran, whispering, "I don't think I deserve this." Ryan, slow and determined. "You kept your country standing during the war. Now it's our turn. We're going to keep you standing." Just then, a car passed by the house. A local reporter stuck her head out, then stopped. She sensed something was starting. But this wasn't an ad or a news story. This was the quiet story of a man who had never lost his dignity, rising again. Renovation work had begun inside the house. No cameras, no microphones, just the sounds of repair and the quiet music of a life being rebuilt. The team Ryan quietly sent was overhauling the entire house. Walls were being reinforced, the roof repaired, the kitchen renewed. But the biggest change was happening inside, in Darnell's spirit. That morning, Darnell took an old chair out to the yard and sat down. His eyes still wandered to the distance, but now they held not just pain, but hope. Ryan approached, holding 2 coffees. He handed one to Darnell. "Ryan, see? This house is stronger than you think." Darnell smiled faintly. "Veteran? Maybe if there's new life inside, it wants to stand strong too." Ryan pulled an envelope from his pocket. It had a local school's logo on it. He handed the envelope to Darnell. "Ryan, this is for your son, a local private school. I talked to the principal this morning. Enrollment's done. The bus service is arranged too." Darnell couldn't believe his eyes. "Veteran," softly, "how did you do this?" Ryan shrugged and smiled. "Ryan, sometimes the biggest change starts with a small secret. That boy deserves it. So do you." Just then, the boy ran out the door wearing his new school uniform. In his hand was a drawing from his first day. A house with 3 figures. Himself, his dad, and one more. "Boy," cheerfully, "that's you, Dad. That's me. And that's Ryan." Darnell's eyes filled with tears. He covered his face with his hands. Not on the battlefield, but in his own backyard. He was crying. But these weren't tears of pain. They were tears of rebuilding. Ryan knelt down to meet the boy's eyes. "Ryan," whispering, "a strong dad means a strong home. Your dad's right here, with you." At that moment, it wasn't just a house being fixed. A father-son bond was being rebuilt. And Ryan stood quietly in the middle of it all, in the background. No cameras, no applause. Because some acts of heroism are done in silence. The house no longer looked like a construction site. It was becoming a home again. Freshly painted walls, newly installed kitchen cabinets, sturdy boards replacing the creaky old ones. Every detail mattered, but every nail hammered was really a spark of hope driven back into Darnell's life. That morning, the biggest miracle might have been the first time his son waved to the school bus. Darnell stepped out onto the porch. Ryan was there, holding a box of nails and a hammer. "Veteran, why would a man like you waste time on something like this, Ryan?" Ryan paused. He set the nails aside and looked straight into Darnell's eyes. "Ryan, because you fought for us once. In streets I never knew, between gunfire I never heard. Now it's our turn. Someone needed to stand by your side, and that someone was me." Darnell lowered his head. Words failed him, but the silence was broken by another man. An elderly neighbor appeared at the end of the street. He was holding a thermos and smiling. "Neighbor, what's going on here? This roof used to leak for years. Now look at it, like new." Ryan waved his hand in greeting. "Ryan, I'm trying to help a friend stand back up." The neighbor nodded, stepped closer, and handed the thermos to Darnell. "Neighbor, men like you owe this country a debt. If we've managed to pay a bit of it back, then we're lucky." From that moment on, things changed. Other neighbors noticed too. Someone brought a blanket, another an old but sturdy table. A kid brought a toy box, saying, "For your son to share." It wasn't just a house being repaired anymore. The spirit of a neighborhood was answering a man's quiet fight. And Ryan Reynolds was still in the background, sitting on the edge of a freshly painted window frame with a brush in hand. Because what he was doing was not just helping, it was repairing without being seen. Most of the heavy work was done. From the outside, the house wasn't just renovated. It was like the wounds of the past had been wiped away, and a new life was starting to grow. But that afternoon, Ryan suddenly grew quiet. Veteran Darnell found him alone in the yard. He was staring at an old photo. The wind gently blew his hair, and his eyes held a distant look. Darnell, cautiously, "Something wrong? You seem miles away." Ryan, softly, still looking at the photo. "This is a picture of my dad. He was a veteran too, served in Vietnam. But when he came back, no one even talked to him. People looked away, lived quietly, left quietly." Darnell lowered his head. For the first time, he saw not just empathy in Ryan's eyes, but scars. Ryan, continuing, "That's why I'm here, Darnell, because I wasn't there for him. But being here for you somehow helps heal the silence inside me." They both stayed quiet for a while. Then the sound of small footsteps came. Darnell's young son had returned from school. He ran to Ryan, notebook in hand, and hugged him. "Son." "Mr. Ryan! Today my teacher was proud of me. I raised my hand for the first time in class." Ryan smiled, bent down to meet his eyes. "Ryan, then I'm proud of you too, because sometimes the bravest thing is to make your voice heard." Darnell couldn't hold back tears. His wife watched from the porch wearing her kitchen apron. That woman was smiling so clearly for the first time in months. Down the street, a group of neighbors whispered among themselves. One showed his phone. A photo of Ryan and Darnell was already spreading on social media with this caption: "A star came and repaired a life, quietly, without show." And maybe for the first time, Ryan Reynolds wasn't just a star on screen. He was a hero in real life. They stood in front of the renovated house. The roof gleamed under the sun. The fresh paint on the exterior shone warmly, and flower boxes adorned the windowsills. There was a small seating area in the yard now. His son ran up the porch steps, his face lit up with surprise and joy. Everything looked radiant. The veteran quietly looked around, tapping his cane gently on the ground. His eyes were moist, but he wasn't crying. He simply wore an expression of deep pride. It was the quietest yet most meaningful moment of his life. Ryan walked up beside him. He hadn't accepted a single interview, refused every camera. He wasn't the hero of this story. The man beside him and his son were. "Ryan," softly, "they've always tried to tell me what this country means. But today, I finally felt it." The veteran turned his head slightly. A long silence settled between them. He was speaking with his eyes now. In the yard, the boy had started running around again. The school bus would arrive any moment. His new uniform, the books in his backpack, this was the start of a future finally written with care. Veteran, voice rough with emotion. "After all these years, someone remembered us." Ryan smiled. He didn't respond. The answer was right there. That house, that roof, the light in that child's eyes. The boy stepped onto the porch, turned to Ryan and called out excitedly, "Oi, the bus is coming!" Ryan crouched slightly and raised his hand in a wave. Ryan, smiling, "All right, don't be late for your first class. Today's the start of something new." As the boy ran out the door, the veteran lowered his head. This time, he didn't hold back the tears. Ryan didn't say a word. He just gently placed a hand on the man's shoulder. At that moment, the school bus appeared at the end of the street. It pulled up quietly, without raising any dust. Before the door shut, the boy waved at Ryan from the window. And in that moment, Ryan thought to himself, some battles aren't won with weapons. Some victories are hidden in a child's future. The house was quiet. The school bus had already turned the corner and disappeared. The veteran sat on a wooden chair on the porch, holding an old photograph, a younger version of himself in uniform, standing beside a young woman. Maybe it was his wife, maybe the most precious piece of his past. Ryan quietly sat beside him. Neither of them spoke. The silence now carried the weight of memory. The wind gently stirred the chimes hanging on the porch. Ryan, in a reflective tone, "You know, being on stage all your life, it wears you down. But sitting in silence on someone's porch, maybe for the first time, it actually means something." The veteran turned his head and smiled. His eyes still sparkled with life. "Veteran," softly, "every hero eventually steps off the stage, but a true hero knows where to stand when the spotlight fades." Ryan froze at the words. It was like his entire past, Hollywood lights, applause, red carpets, suddenly fell away. Just then, Lena pulled up at the end of the street. She rolled the window down and looked over at Ryan. "Lena," from the car window. "Schedule's full. Press is waiting for you downtown. We can head out now if you're ready." Ryan took a deep breath. He glanced at the veteran, then at the house's brand new front door. Slowly, he shook his head. "Ryan, I'm not leaving today. Maybe I'll stay a few more days. Feels like there's still some work to be done." Lena looked surprised, but then nodded with quiet understanding. She drove away without a word. Ryan remained on the porch, and for the first time, time itself seemed to pause. No news outlet, no gala, no spotlight could ever replace the silence of that moment. The veteran stood up, leaning on his cane as he walked to the door. Before stepping inside, he turned back and spoke. "Veteran, that boy can finally think about the future now. But you, Ryan, what will you think about?" Ryan squinted out toward the horizon. Maybe he thought of his past, of his father, of some moment he never quite got right. And he whispered, "Ryan, maybe I'll remember where I began." Night had fallen, but the house wasn't dark anymore. Inside, new lights glowed softly. Repaired furniture stood in place, and the warm aroma of soup lingered in the air. Ryan sat at the kitchen table, holding an old notebook. He'd found it earlier, a journal filled with personal entries from the veteran. Every line told a story, a memory from the battlefield, a friend lost, a farewell letter never sent. As Ryan flipped through the pages, one sentence caught his eye. "Coming back is always harder, because a man has to return not just from war, but from within himself." Ryan looked up. He gazed across the living room. The veteran had fallen asleep in the armchair. Quietly, Ryan walked over and gently covered him with a blanket. Then he stepped outside onto the porch. The sky was wide open. He pulled out his phone. A new notification lit up the screen. Ryan Reynolds returns in new superhero blockbuster. The announcement from his Los Angeles studio flashed in bold letters. Ryan stared at it for a moment, then locked the screen and slid the phone back into his pocket. He looked up at the stars and spoke softly, almost like a whisper to the sky. "Ryan," to himself, quietly. "Maybe I want to be a different kind of hero now." Just then, he heard tiny footsteps behind him. The boy had woken up. He walked over and took Ryan's hand in silence. They stood there side by side, looking out into the night. The child didn't say a word, but in his eyes, Ryan saw peace. For the first time, he truly felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. As the morning sun slowly rose, the old crumbling house had become something entirely different. The walls were freshly painted, the windows brand new. Even the sign above the door had been replaced. What was once a rusted piece of metal now stood as a wooden board, hand-painted with a child's drawing of a house. Underneath it were just 3 words: "We started again." Inside, the breakfast table was quiet. The veteran, as always, was up early, gazing out the kitchen window. His son sat nearby, dressed in his school uniform, tying his shoes. At that moment, Ryan Reynolds appeared in the doorway. He wore a simple coat and held a small box in his hands. He smiled. "Ryan, ready?" The boy nodded excitedly. He turned to his father. They shared a quiet look. The veteran gently ran a hand through his son's hair, then nodded toward Ryan in gratitude. They stepped outside. The school bus was already waiting at the curb. The boy grabbed his new backpack and ran toward it, waving one last time before boarding. And in that moment, the veteran looked away, not out of sadness, but because it was more than just a school morning. It was a turning point in a life. As the bus drove off, Ryan gently held out the box. "Ryan," softly, "this is for you. It's just a small thing, but it carries a long meaning." The veteran opened it. Inside, an old medal, a framed certificate, and a handwritten letter. The certificate, signed by Ryan, read, "Honor Supporter, with respect to a hero." The veteran stared at it for a long moment, then looked at Ryan. Veteran choked up. It's too much. I don't deserve something like this." Ryan, earnestly, "On the contrary, people like you are the reason we're still here. This house isn't just restored because of the wood and paint. It matters because life inside it was rebuilt." They sat together on the bench out front. The wind was light. Birds were singing. The veteran tilted his head up, taking it all in. "Veteran, you know, no one stopped by our home in a long time, especially not to help, not one person." Ryan smiled. "Ryan, I just took the first step. The real healing, it's in your son's eyes, in the way he still believes in you." They sat in silence for a moment, then Ryan slowly stood up. "Ryan, one last time. I'll be heading out, but if you ever need anything, this address is saved in my phone." Just as he began walking toward his car, the boy came running back around the corner. Out of breath, he held up a notebook. He handed it to Ryan. "Boy," softly, I wrote this last night. I wanted you to have it." Ryan knelt down and opened it. On the page, there was just one sentence. "Thank you for hearing me." Ryan closed his eyes. He didn't speak. He simply bowed his head. And then he whispered, "Ryan, no, little buddy. Thank you. Crowds have silenced me before, but a kid like you reminded me why I need to keep speaking." As the car drove away, the camera slowly panned up, revealing the renewed house, the flag out front, and the silent image that showed a hero was no longer alone. Final words faded in on the screen. Sometimes, a house isn't just repaired. A life is rebuilt. And sometimes, you don't fix the world. You just remember your humanity.